Alrighty there. Welcome everyone to the 5/18/22 Project Review Committee meeting. The Project Review Committee is a 9-member advisory board. They review all major site plan reviews, projects referred to it by the manager of zoning. The Project Review Committee makes a recommendation to approve subject to conditions, or deny the application. And so today we have 2 items on our agenda, both major site plan reviews, where the Project Review Committee will be reviewing them and then making a recommendation to the next step, the next advisory board. It's kind of a rough, it's not a super rigid procedure. What we'll do is we will allow the applicant to share their screen, share their drawings, give a brief presentation or spiel about the project. I can kind of go over what the Project Review Committee is specifically looking at, things we might need comments on, things that they might need the approval body will want to be making their decision on, so we can kind of give guided referrals or recommendations on. And then there might be a brief question and answer period between the applicant and the review committee. And after that, we'll go to the next case. When all cases are heard, we will go, the Project Review Committee will deliberate and then ultimately vote on whether what their recommendation will be. So with that being said, I will pass the mic to Brett Steenberg for him to introduce himself. Brett is representing the first case on this evening's agenda, which is a proposed drive-through restaurant at 770 East Main Street.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon. My name is Brett Steenberg. I'm the engineer for the applicant, Liberty Restaurants Development Group. Their proposal to develop a Popeyes fast food restaurant located at 770 East Main Street. And I will start by sharing my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. 770 East Main Street is bordered on the south by East Main Street, the east by Alexander Street, and on the north by Kenilworth Terrace. You can see it here in its previous condition, which was a large, I believe, 2 or 3 story structure, and with a very large parking lot in the back. Have to bear with me here a minute. Did that change to the site plan, or are we still looking at the aerial?
Now we're looking at the site plan.
The site plan. Okay, good. I wasn't sure if that changed it or not. So what we're proposing is to construct a 2,532 square foot Popeyes fast food restaurant with a basically a double ordering kiosk drive-through that funnels down to a single pickup window. The proposal, there are 2 existing curb cuts on Alexander Street, one located here and one located here. It's proposed to relocate this curb cut a little bit further to the south to allow for proper configuration of the parking lot. With the main access to the site being near the intersection of Kenilworth Terrace and Alexander Street in the back. Most vehicles, patrons who would be entering the restaurant, and bear in mind the restaurant does only have 24 seats within it. They found that the majority of their traffic tends to be drive-through. The majority of the patrons who would actually desire to actually sit in the restaurant and eat would probably enter this parking lot, which is facing Alexander Street. Angled parking, proper turning behind it. But there will be additional parking at the rear of the site for vehicles wishing to go through the drive-through. They'll basically come to the far western portion of the site and enter the drive-through on this side. Very important to Popeyes to have a lot of stacking with the drive-through. They don't want to cause traffic problems on neighboring streets, should there, or on their own parking lot for that matter, should the parking and the drive-through stack up. So actually this site laid out very well to provide I believe you can fit almost 24 cars before the kiosk, so that you can get adequate stacking without um, any backing up into the parking lot. Vehicles will order at one of the two kiosks located here, and then pull ahead with a payment window here and a pickup window a little bit further down the line. When I did speak with Marcia earlier when we delivered the application, I discussed after standing on the site, I don't believe having a full service exit located here is in anyone's best interest. And I did explain that to Popeyes from a safety standpoint because of the way the intersection is configured. I think if vehicles were attempting to make a left-hand turn onto Main Street, it would just be a difficult maneuver. So this will be signed accordingly, and actually we'll probably put a little bit of a taper in the curb line here to make that a right out only. So people exiting the drive-through, the only way to exit the drive-through would be to make a right on Main Street. And if they need to travel the other way, they'll have to go around the block and come back. We just feel that that's the safest scenario in this case. With regard to the people parking, they can either exit here if they're in this parking lot onto Alexander, or if they're in the rearmost parking lot, they can exit on the northerly exit out to Alexander Street, come down to the light, or go back to Kenilworth Terrace and go about their travels. This particular site plan, as shown, is showing about 9% more green space than that aerial photograph I opened with, showing you what was there before. So we are increasing the overall green space and trying to maintain, something, especially on the rear portions of the parcel where we do have this large island of green space that'll have some trees in it, to get some greenery on the rear of the site. As well as some significant shrubbery and landscaping located along the foundation and along this parking lot, right, pretty much right along between the parking lot and the sidewalk, a low area of shrubbery, and some larger trees located around the site. This does meet the landscaping requirements for the number of trees based on the lineal footage of the site, given the quantity of lineal frontage this site has, being frontage on 3 sides. That was pretty substantial, but we have no issue providing that. The dumpster enclosure will actually be located right on the rear of the building. This small bump out you see is the walk-in cooler, and then the dumpster, which will be a masonry enclosure constructed of split face block, colored to match the existing building siding, will be located on the back. There's a service entrance into the building so that when they empty their trash, they basically can just walk out. There's a rear entrance into the dumpster to get rid of the trash in the dumpster. Now, moving into the reason this kicked off a major site plan review, the main reason was the amount of glazing or transparent surfaces along the frontage of both Main Street and Alexander Street. Being a corner lot, it requires a lot of transparent surfaces. And I'm going to jump to the front elevation now. As you can see, Popeyes does have a lot of transparent surfaces on their front elevation. If we were an interior lot, we would certainly be able to come close or meet that. How we're at about 60% on this front elevation. However, because it's a corner lot, we have to not only meet that requirement on the front, but we also have to meet that requirement on the side. Now, the city's code states the transparent surfaces being between 2 and 7 feet from finished grade. As you can see, one of the things that Popeyes does is they actually run their glazed or transparent surfaces right down to the finished grade in front of the structure, which actually gives it even more of an appearance of glazed surface on the front. In this particular location, unfortunately, this is the facility restrooms for their structure. So it would be impossible to put glazed surfaces there. And then this does jut back out. If you look at the site plan, this does jut back out over here, and that's the edge of the drive-through window. So the drive-through window facing obviously the opposite way. So if need be, I could talk to the architects about putting some glazed surfaces in there, but I do think it would look kind of funny because you'd be looking in at that person sitting at the kiosk handing out food all day from the front of the building. Moving on to the side elevation facing Alexander Street. This is the side elevation. Again, a lot of glazed surfaces, in particular near the East Main Street side of the parcel, near the front of the building, and actually you can see right straight through to the Main Street side of the building. However, like I said, this is only a 24-seat restaurant. This is, the seating area, and once you get to this point here, you're standing at the counter. Moving towards the rear of the building, you've got if you look at the floor plan, you've got your counter area, and then you've got your food preparation area, basically in this whole area here, and then your walk-in cooler, which matches the siding as well. Now on this elevation, I did add some of the trees that I was proposing to kind of offset the lack of glazed surfaces on this side. And what we're proposing along that side and in between, basically flanking both sides of the signage on this brick wall and flanking their decorative shutters, and then covering the entire cooler as well as the side of the dumpster screen are, I like to use them in landscaping because they tend to be very salt tolerant, which I know is a concern within the city. They're Hinoki cypresses, or a false cypress tree, which they look actually a little more like a cedar tree than a true cypress tree. That's why they call them a false cypress. But they're slender and they will grow. They're fast growing and they're very tolerant. They're also deer resistant, which I don't anticipate would be a problem on this parcel, but we do like to use them a lot in landscaping, and they would offer some greenery along that side of some taller greenery along that side of the building. And if you look at the landscaping plan, we've actually continued the low shrubbery underneath as well between here and pretty much all the way to the rear of the structure. And then looking at, this would be the drive-through side of the building, which would be facing the dance studio. Again, I do want to note their finishes. I don't think I discussed that too much initially, but going back to the front elevation, they do a very good job finishing the building. Painted brick around this window area, white painted brick. And then it's kind of a wood decorative tower located here. And then moving along the Alexander Avenue side, the wood painted brick transitioning into another tower, which is a natural brick color. And then moving towards the rear of the building, this would be a ephes or stucco type of finish, kind of in that white color to match the painted brick on the front of the building. Excuse me. So moving back, again, giving it some varying textures. You've got the ephes on this side, on the drive-through side, with that wood kind of decorative tower, and then some vertical wood siding along the pickup window. Give it a little more, some variations in tones, variations in textures. I actually think they've done a very good job with their prototype and trying to make it something that's attractive and not just your old boring brick fast food restaurants that you used to see constructed 15 to 20 years ago.
Can I ask a question?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I can wait.
Just looking very briefly at the floor plan, this the top of the side would be the Alexander Avenue side. As you can see, this would be the counter. From this area back is the area that we can't incorporate any glazing or windows. And again, on the front of it, this would be the area in here with the restrooms that we are unable to incorporate that glazing. One thing I did want to note is the elevations that we provided, and their standard elevations are 18 feet tall with a 19-foot tower. With this tower being 19 feet and the parapet being 18 feet, we could increase that to the required 20 feet if necessary to meet the zoning code for the building height. It just would be an increased parapet wall on the top. And all the mechanicals for the site are screened within inside that parapet wall, so you're not seeing the HVAC units and such. But at this point, I would be happy to open it up to questions and field any questions that you may have, and hopefully try to address any concerns.
I have a question about the Kenilworth entrance. Was there discussion of reducing curb cuts? That would be a logical one to remove since it's kind of in the neighborhood.
Yes, I totally understand that, and I did discuss that with Marcia. And actually, we discussed possibly removing some or all of this parking in this area and providing a landscape plan and removing that. We do not need this entrance, and if that's something this board desires, we'd be happy to remove that and operate off of this entrance. And then maybe I don't know, if, depending on the parking calculations, we do have a good amount of on-street parking located along Alexander. I think we could remove all of this parking as well, and just be able to provide more green space between the neighborhood residents there and the facility.
That was going to be my question. If all that parking was really necessary. So I'm glad to hear you're willing to consider increasing the green buffer.
Yeah, that's something we could do.
Is any of that parking necessary in the back?
I believe this parking in here would be necessary. We're going to have this drive aisle anyway to get to the drive-through. My feeling is that this would ultimately become more of the employee parking in the rear, freeing these spaces up, which has easy access to the sidewalk and easy access to the building for patrons.
Okay. Looks like a parallel parking space getting more to the corner of Alexander and Main. Yeah, right where you are.
Yep.
Is that existing, or is that something that you?
That is existing. It's actually being truncated slightly. Where I have my cursor right now is where it starts. So we would have to actually eliminate two parallel parking spaces in here to create this exit onto Alexander. And if need be, if those spaces were deemed necessary from the city standpoint, we could look at recreating these spaces to the north of that curb cut exit.
Where your cursor is right now,
yes,
is a great place to put street trees. And I'm almost thinking that I'm not sure if you really need that parallel parking further down, and that you could carry that green tree lawn right where your cursor is right now and make that edge a lot more interesting for the pedestrian, I guess.
Yep.
The other thing is you've got, as we go down to the building, you've got the sidewalk, and then you have a reasonably wide green space between the sidewalk right where you are and the building.
Right here.
And I'm sort of saying, wouldn't it be interesting if you could continue that going up north and in trade that green buffer that is between the patron parking and the drive-in parking, and shove that over to the edge and widen that green space. So go over to the landscaping that you have between the patron parking and the
right
drive.
here. Yeah.
go between the
Yeah.
patron parking and the drive up parking, the waiting right there. Keep going down. There you go. Take all of that and push it over to the other side right there. And widen that green space and really make it more substantial. In fact, what I would probably recommend is you do some sort of a decorative wall feature there to really hide those cars that are along there. So I don't know how wide your drive lanes are for the stack up.
Yeah, the drive lanes are actually shown here at 10 feet wide, so we're only 20 feet wide on that aisle.
Okay.
And I did want to leave a little bit of a buffer between those two areas.
Why?
To create a curved island. You get much less than 3.5, 4 feet, and it becomes really just a curve between the two.
Okay.
I think Roger thinks that's good, though, to consolidate the green space and not do that little strip. I'm concerned about how plant materials will really do in an urban environment in these little hot strips isolated. So I agree with Roger. I think it might be a merit to combine the green spaces and make it fatter, and then screen the cars more definitively with something that's built.
So really just to kind of create more just a single, maybe 1.5 wide, 2 foot wide wall from here back, so that we can pick up this green space and shift all this parking a little bit to the west and then relocate that over to here.
Yes.
Okay.
The city is trying to create walkable environments. And I think it would really help separate further the sidewalk from the parking there if that green space was enhanced further.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my thought there. And that, frankly, in continuing back down to that parallel parking spot, to the corner there of Alexander and Main, I can see, again, a great tree lawn opportunity for you. As you go down. I don't know how possible that is, but
Roger, I do think we have to be cautious about creating work in the right of way when.
Oh, sure. However, again, the city is looking for more tree lawn opportunities, and I'm not so sure if you really need a parallel parking pull-in along there. It might be more advantageous to make, a tree lawn there and work with the city.
I think at a minimum, we need DAS to look at the parking in the area, because it's not just this restaurant. There's other people in the area that need parking. So I think
for sure.
We need it looked at beyond this particular application.
Okay. Well, okay.
But I think Tom's here, so I think Tom heard.
Yeah, I think we'd probably bring it to TCB if it was a change in the street width. So landscaping is a little easier because we could probably just recommend that they work with forestry if they were using the existing tree lawn. To expand that, it would take a little bit more review, but it could be possible. It's just not something we can really commit to without reviewing in more depth.
Okay, that's fine. But again, I'm really trying to enhance the pedestrian experience here, as opposed to the vehicular experience, which we have a lot of up on this site. When I first drove through here, I was looking at the property off of Kenilworth and saying, wouldn't that parking lot be a great place for some sort of residential situation up there, as opposed to this big parking, lot that you have, because you're really right on the edge of a really, relatively large residential area. So I don't have any issues, I guess, although frankly, the restaurant that you're proposing to me is a very suburban looking restaurant. And somehow you haven't really put enough effort into making that a special, more urban kind of situation. Even the Wendys down the way has a little bit more urbanity to it than this does. And I'm thinking of a project that was done by Randy Peacock over across from College Town. I think it's a Chili's, a standard, a restaurant that they put a lot of effort and design effort into making it a little more special for that part of the, for downtown, for the city. And somehow there's a lot of signage, there's a lot of chickens all over that building, and it somehow just doesn't have a nice urban feeling to it. So
do you guys want us to comment on signage? It looks like there's maybe 9 signs and you're probably allowed 1 or 2, right?
Well,
They would definitely need variances for the signage.
I want to point, there's a building, and maybe you guys can pull it up, on the corner of Alexander and Mount Hope. It's a building that maybe was redone 10 years ago.
So, I mean, I just want to be clear here, Roger, just, the only deviation, and Anna can correct me, is the transparency. So I'm a little concerned about going beyond what's required, and they're meeting the code except for the transparency and not the signage. They would need variances for the signage. So I just want to put that out there, that that is really all we're concerned with here right now in terms of how it affects the design.
Who is concerned for the look of this building and the design of this building?
No, I mean, it's fair enough to talk about it, but keep in mind that what's triggering them to be here is the glazing.
We did review the design standards for non-residential buildings, and it did actually meet the design standards, except the one area where it triggered major site plan review was the blank wall area, and that's the one facing Alexander Street with the refrigerator and kind of like the chicken decals and stuff like that. So that blank wall area is what's triggering major site plan review.
Sure. Well, again, this building that I'm recommending, or that you look at on the corner of Alexander and Mount Hope, has a blank wall on the Alexander Street side that was done in a rather nice way. And you might look at that as a way to help the facade of this building. I like the glazing in the front and the side is actually pretty good. I think it's got that, and it has a really nice horizontal canopy and a horizontal feeling to it. And then it's broken up with all of this stuff that just doesn't carry the design theme through in a very good manner.
Roger, the building down Alexander Street, is that the DePaul building that you're?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and looking at the Google image of it, they have windows and a door, and then they have a series of blind windows, in recessed arch.
That's correct.
Which just carry the rhythm down.
Carries the rhythm very nicely. Is that a way we can put it on this screen here?
Oh, I'm looking at it.
I know you're looking at it.
Yeah, I can try to find it and pop it.
There was a time then I thought that somebody could. But it was a really nice architectural solution. It doesn't have to be copied, but it.
Yeah, I mean, if they did it here, it probably would be more like one larger, simple recessed panel or something like that.
I don't know. I didn't spend any time.
I can do it rather than make you do it. I can do it.
Yeah.
I was just looking to see, I don't know the neighborhood that well, but I was looking to see if I could.
You know it, it's Mount Hope.
So, hey,
right,
Roseanne, and this is Dave. It just kind of underscoring your point. We're not an architecture review board, but and we need to be careful with that. But can you tell me, for this particular use, in this particular location, there's no issues relative to the use and the function in this area. In other words, they have a right to build in this area, right? Given the zoning.
Gonna
Yes,
let
that-
Anna address that.
yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's a permitted use in the zoning district.
Right, so it is a permitted use, and so we're only dealing with transparency. Yeah, okay, and are there any triggers based upon the old Eastman Dental Clinic? Was that a designated historic landmark or in any way? I just can't remember when it was. Of course, it's older than 50 years, but does that trigger anything because of the adjacency?
The adjacency would trigger site plan review, for which this already has a site plan review trigger. So it would have just triggered the same review of the internal zoning
Okay.
process.
And, all right, so, and is the normal notification process therefore required within 500 feet sort of thing? I just, again, I'm thinking about things that from my distant past, and I'm probably goofing them up with what I'm saying, but.
No, you're spot on. So with this, because this is a major site plan review, we notify the official neighborhood contact and the surrounding property owners.
All right,
So
so that's,
sometimes with our regular, like minor site plans, which we have more minor site plans than major, we only notify the official neighborhood contact. In the case of this project, surrounding property owners were also notified because it's major and it requires a PRC referral.
yep, all right, you guys are all over it, thank you.
And that, this is especially permitted, right? So it's going to CPC for the use,
No,
C2.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I had a question. Anna, do you mind going back to the slide that shows the front facade rendering, please?
Actually, Brett, who has the wheel right
For
now.
the front, yes, I can.
I apologize if you mentioned this already, but this looks to be inconsistent with the site plan, and I assume that there's not going to be a through aisle there in front of the building.
No, there's not. This is off of their standard renderings.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Could I ask, I don't know what the, you probably mentioned it and I apologize, but the depth of the, or the setback, I should say, the landscape setback on either the main or Alexander side. And my question is it deep enough to consider, if people wanted to consider, an outdoor dining area, like a sidewalk cafe style type of thing, as opposed to having landscaping?
Currently, the building is shown 7 foot back. I did speak to them. They don't do a lot of outdoor dining, but it's something that I can talk to them to consider. With regard to Alexander, we've kind of got the building pushed closer to Alexander. I think the way the zoning code reads, and Anna, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's the 0 to 5 feet or the average of the building, something along those lines. It's a more confusing. So we've got it pushed pretty close to that property line. But it's something that I can, if this is something that the city is looking for, we can certainly take it to the owners and applicants.
Definitely having the building constructed right there, snug on the corner, helps it meet some of our drive-through requirements, and that this forces all the drive-through related operations to occur in the side yard. If it, kind of having it right up in the corner alleviates those like having the drive-through in the front yard kind of thing.
Well, it is an interesting idea that Eric brings up, and conceptually, I like it. I mean, first of all, I think it's great that you've already put the building right up to the sidewalk on both sides. But if it were to be moved back for seating in the front, I think that would be a positive addition. But I'm just trying to look at it to see what are the ripple effects at the rear of the building. Does that cause a problem in the rear of the building for the rest of the design and the curb cut? But for what it's worth, if it didn't cause any bad ripple effects in the rear, I think that would really help with a sort of pedestrian oriented design that we're looking for on Main Street, which is spelled out pretty clearly in 3 different plans that I can think of. for this area to be able to focus on that. So I think that would help mitigate the fact that this is a drive-through restaurant. But again, I don't know if it would cause undue ripple effects in the rear of the building.
We would end up having to slide basically everything back a little bit from stacking and drive-through. I don't foresee a major issue. We may end up losing one of the patron parking spaces, but I don't foresee a major issue. If this board, if it would help, alleviate some of the concerns regarding the transparency and such, we could certainly look at sliding that building a little further back and providing some outdoor dining and some tables in the front, maybe even a decorative fence along the sidewalk line to delineate that seating area in front of Popeyes, and give them that ability.
All I was thinking, I wasn't thinking a separate patio, but just the building is pretty close to the sidewalk, and which is great. And rather than, is it deep enough to, instead of having landscaping, have a paved area or pavered area with some two top tables or something like that?
Well, there is 7 feet of landscaping there between the foundation and the sidewalk. That side, the East Main Street side, actually has a little more landscaping than the Alexander side. So we could certainly do something in there with some pavers in lieu of the landscaping. We've just been working hard to try to, create, something that the city wants and is attractive, because we know there's no way for us to meet that transparency requirement.
Yeah, I also want to caution that I don't want to end up pushing this so far back that now we need a variance for setback. So again, we got to take everything in balance.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly. I don't want to push the building back.
Right.
And so to that point, talk about the setback in this area. I don't know what it is. I mean, buildings adjacent to it, to the left of it are, they vary in their setback. What's the zoning regs for this area?
I would have
I
to
can
look it
pull
up.
that
I
up.
think-
I can pull it up, but I feel like the
I
Delta
think it's the
Sonic
average.
skews it because of. Here, I can look that up while you guys.
Well, a lot of times it's the precedent in the area, it's the average side, but sometimes it's, so to speak, zero setback in the front. In other words, we want a building right on the street, like Eric was talking about, or right on the curb, right on the sidewalk edge, right on the public domain edge. So pushing it back further, as Roseanne says, may become more of an issue. There is an entrance there, which is very nice, and another one on Alexander, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think, and to Anna's point, I think the car wash at the opposite end of the block kind of skews that setback requirement. I think Guys and Dolls is set a little bit further back. Wendy's is slightly further back than what we are, but then the car wash at the west end of the block ends up is very close to East Main Street. So we've kind of meeting the difference between all of them. Personally, I like, in the more urban setting, having the building set as close to that sidewalk line as possible, to make it more of an inviting walk-in type of facility, and less, I just think it ends up becoming a little bit more fitting with the character of the neighborhood. But we could certainly do whatever.
Are there any outdoor tables on Wendy's?
I don't believe so.
I mean, that's a nice, I could see Popeyes going back as far as Wendy's, actually.
I'm just going to remind everybody that the trigger here is the glazing. And
Sure.
much as I appreciate, the general comments, where they are meeting code, and I just have a hesitancy to sort of push for redesign of things that are currently meeting code, and sort of try to focus on the things that are actually triggering the major site plan review, if possible.
Right.
I mean, to contrast it to last week where, they needed a bazillion waivers and variances, and now here we are with something that's done a really good job to try to meet the code. If we could at least provide some focus feedback on the trigger.
Yeah, so bring us back to is it the Alexander Street elevation, Roseanne?
Yes, it's that street because it's a front yard. And again, going back, I mean, Roger touched on a lot of it already about, what that particular facade looks like, because that's the facade that's not meeting the requirements. And we've already got some comments about the signage, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Roger, but the signage and the artwork not really making up in a substantial way for the lack of glazing.
That's part of it, but it's really how, they break it up with this big brick mass, and then they drop these two little picture kinds of things. I mean, they have, on the left side of that building, it's a really nice, frankly, elevation, the horizontality of the canopy there and so forth. If you carried the horizontality across and maybe did something a little more repetitive below that or above that, I don't, from a design point, there's lots I think they can do to make this thing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think a little bit more study on that could make a big difference. And I think that while those are branded standards that we're seeing there, I frankly don't think that they're, without them or doing them differently, would ultimately reduce sales or completely change the attraction to the restaurant. But I think, yeah, if we worked a little harder on those two opaque areas, it could really become a much nicer facade.
And what might be helpful too is a little more strength to the cornice, the coping at the top. It's something that you might consider.
I don't know. It's a modern building, so I don't think you can half traditionalize it and have it be very successful.
Well, I wasn't saying you do that, but there are other things you can do in a contemporary way to strengthen the top. So, David, did you do DePaul over on Mount Hope and Alexander?
Well, the royal we did it, but I did not.
No, I understand. Yeah. Okay. Well,
we did.
Whoever did it, it was a nice treatment.
Okay, so I think if we could wrap it up, since we spent a lot of time on it, are there any final comments related to the glazing?
I have a quick
Just
one.
for the-
Go ahead,
Tom.
Matt. You haven't talked yet.
For the sake of discussion, the building across the street has no glazing whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the architecture of this does kind of mirror that. So just throwing it out there.
Tom?
Okay, what building is that?
The dental dispensary, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, directly across the street on Alexander.
Yeah, the side of the addition.
The side of the addition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but okay. It has a lot of other things going for it, though, that could mitigate that.
Yeah, I think, like Roseanne was saying, it's well designed in that the building is set as far away on that parcel from the residential as possible. And I think being set where it is, the frontage on Main Street does meet the glazing requirements, and we're architecturally satisfied with that. And the frontage on Alexander could be considered, maybe not by the code, but from a building standpoint, a more secondary frontage. And it's looking more at the secondary quote unquote frontage of the building across the street from it as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that idea. I still think it's worth, still exploring some improvements to those opaque areas to try to accomplish a facade that, works in the area, accomplishes what the brand needs, and also breaks the facade down a little bit. little bit of sketching, I think could come up with a couple of ideas.
I could certainly take this to the architects for corporate and see what they can come up with, within their branding, so to say, but I think we could probably work something out to hopefully meet your concerns. And Roger brought up a lot of good points. So.
Yeah, and I would just note that wall without that sign on it, because it may be one of the signs that's too many potentially.
Understood.
It's just a blank wall. Yeah.
When we do, get a little bit further through the process here, we will be preparing a full sign package for the site and going over, if and when variances are needed and what they would be looking to do. And we would certainly be open to any suggestions.
So Brett, should I take that to mean that you're comfortable with us not voting on this tonight, but just coming back?
I would love a positive vote tonight. I won't lie, but at the same time, I would rather be everyone happy as well. So
yeah, a vote can look like they can recommend like conditions or mitigating measures, so they can get specific and what. Like they approve it under the following conditions if you pursue XYZ kind of thing.
Okay, we would definitely look for that.
Okay, any last questions from the committee?
My last comment was, I think the queuing lanes are supposed to be screened from residential. And although you're kind of in the back, if you were going to eliminate that rear row of parking, it would be good to have some actual landscaping back there, not just grass.
In this area right here?
No, further, you said you might eliminate the furthest north row.
This would be eliminated.
Yeah,
and
so just some landscaping in that area.
What's that?
Just to add some landscaping in that area. Not it doesn't have to be
in this area,
hedgerow.
absolutely.
Yeah, just something maybe interesting landscaping in that area.
Absolutely.
Right, and that rear curb cut, I think Brett said wouldn't be necessary. We'd come in off of Alexander Street, so that changes the flow very nicely.
The rear curb cut off Kenilworth or Alexander?
Off of Kenilworth, I thought that's what you said, that you would not need that.
Right, yeah, I thought you said Alexander. We need the curb cut off Alexander, but we don't need the curb cut on Kenilworth.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
So I'll propose approval on condition that they resubmit with those revisions on the Kenilworth frontage, and then potential revisions to the Alexander Street frontage, maybe without the standard signage and any other potential changes there.
What do people think about adding the idea of increasing the green and landscaping on the Alexander Street side, including the idea of looking into eliminating the on-street parking and replacing it with?
I would not be comfortable making the on-street parking any condition for this applicant. That has to be done with DES. And if DES decides that they can't do it, then they can't do it. So I'm a little leery of putting within the site, yeah, if you want to, yes, but I would not want the right of way work any condition on.
The on-street parking is there now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay, Roger, with combining the landscape areas. I mean, we're not really increasing it. We're combining what they've shown into one.
No, that's true. I agree with that. Yeah.
On the street side, so I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have the motion from Matt to recommend approval on condition that, let me actually see if I can do this. So the rear, the curb cut on Kenilworth be removed, that last lane of parking be removed and replaced with landscaping. And then I'll need your guys' help while I write this down.
I would say that the dividing landscape aisle between the queuing lanes and the angled parking lanes be shrunk, and the width the remaining width be added to the Alexander Street landscape buffer.
Okay.
Okay,
And then I think the last piece is that the Alexander Street facade be improved to rely less heavily on signage and to reflect some further consideration of extending, how would we put it, extending the pattern of the glazing onto the solid walls.
Mhm.
Roger may want to tweak that. I think that's what the point was.
well,
Matt
you
is-
know, that's interesting. It is a matter of design, and I suppose I would accentuate the horizontality of the facade as opposed to the vertical blocks and breaks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how specific we can get. I think if you did a blind recessed panel in the masonry that topped out at the level of the canopy and then came down to some sill, I mean, that a big blind recessed panel would give a little bit of detail to that solid wall that would probably help.
Okay, I'm going to cut it off there because we're starting to get repetitive, and I think the applicant has heard the suggestions. So Matt has a motion on the table. So do we have a second? Do we second, Anna, usually?
Yeah, we can second.
I'll second.
Thanks,
Okay.
Kevin. So I can go by name and get your vote, either like yay or nay. One moment while I pull up the participant list.
Sounds good. Call the roll.
Mr. Yarrington,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Oh, sure.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mrs. Khalil,
Yes.
Dave, did I call you Mr. Biani?
No, yes.
Thanks. Mr. Frisch,
Yes.
Mr. Vanderwall,
Yep.
Mr. Kiesier,
Yes.
and I don't believe I'm missing anyone. We have 8 people here, so by a vote of 800, the motion passes in the affirmative.
Thank you very much.
And Brett, can you do me a favor by ending, like no longer sharing your screen?
Yes,
Thank
sorry.
you. No, you're good.
Is that good?
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time and comments today, and we'll get back to you hopefully with something that addresses the majority of your concerns, if not all of them. Thank you.
And I'll put it in writing for you, Brett, so you
Okay.
can have something to bring back to the client, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good. Thanks, Anna.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next, I'm going to pass the mic to Art and his team. Art, you can either share the screen yourself or you can direct me to pull up your project documents.
I would love it if you could pull up our project.
Sure thing.
It would be very helpful.
Yep,
Thank you.
I can do that. Mhm. Let me just get there one moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Oops, wrong doc.
No, I'm there. There. The light has to go there. Yes, over on this, that's it.
Here we go. Alrighty, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. First of all, I'd want to say they've already been introduced, but Randy Peacock, who was the designer on the project, architect, is with us, as well as Mr. and Mrs. George and Margot Novak, who own the property and are the applicants. So basically, if we could, could we go to the colored site plan, Anna?
The
And Anna,
landscaping
could you,
plan?
Or split, sure. Whatever.
Did
and
you want
Anna,
the lands?
could you just remind us too what the triggers are here?
Yes. So what we have on the table is to demolish a designated building of historic value and then to construct a parking lot in its place to serve the multifamily. Is this the color document?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is the proposed site plan. These were originally two separate properties. Property at 99-105 Harvard Street on the corner of Harvard and North Goodman, which is a 4-family dwelling. And there's currently a building which previously was known as 304-306 South Goodman Street, which was originally a residential structure. It's had significant changes on the interior and exterior, and had a non-conforming office building use throughout the building. Those properties were combined several months ago into one under the address of 99-105 Harvard Street. And as Anna noted, we seek to demolish the building, and because it is a designated building of historic value, we need to go to the zoning board for a variance to do that. And I believe we are scheduled for June 16th to have that discussion with the zoning board. In the meantime, with respect to the site plan and your review of the site plan, today we did get some preliminary findings, which I thought were generally positive, or certainly no significant issues of impact raised through that preliminary process anyways. And we think there are many benefits associated with the purpose of this application. That is to provide the property at the corner, the multiple family dwelling, which is, at least in our opinion, the much more significant designated building of historic value, with code required lot size. Currently, or previously, each lot had non-conforming structures and, of course, non-conforming uses. This application will allow the property at the corner, the multiple family dwelling, for the first time to have the amount of lot size that would be required for the density of 4 apartments with multiple bedrooms since the building of the structure. We're proposing 7 spaces, 6 being required for the multiple family dwelling, and the one more allowed, in that we are within 110% of that requirement. So we have 6 required and 1 additional space that will meet the needs of the 4 apartments, again with multiple bedrooms. We feel that the landscaping in the front yard is appropriate. We feel that greater usable open space is provided to the site, particularly to the tenants. As you'll note on the back of the building, patio areas and some additional green space is added, and better defining those patio areas, along with upgrades in lighting, etc. And that goes for the parking lot. We do, for the in the perimeter of the parking lot, install shrubs, and that would be to the east and where are we here? And the back end of the lot, and also along the property, I think it's at 316 South Goodman Street, next door to the parking lot. So, I mean, that's generally what we're doing, and why we're doing it. We think that, again, the site plan meets code requirements and will actually result in better code conformance for the building at 99-105 Harvard Street. And I would just that's
8458-870064. Call from 8458-870064.
Roger, would you just mind muting yourself, please?
I'm sorry.
Can you just put yourself on mute, please?
Yeah, I'm trying.
So anyway, that's really it in a nutshell. And we'd like your, your recommendation to the manager to approve the final site plan subsequent to our visit to the zoning board on June 16th. I don't know if I may, I'd like to ask the clients, Margot and George, if they have any comment at this point or just want to be involved in response to questions.
Yes.
Well, I have a comment. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. We live across the street from 99 to 105 Harvard at 100 Harvard Street. We moved into 100 Harvard Street in 1972, and that's when we acquired 99 to 105 Harvard Street across the street. At that point, it was when we acquired it, there was a doctor's office located on Goodman Street. There was a porch that we removed on Goodman Street with a permit from the city of Rochester. And it was at the time we purchased it, it was a 6-unit because the doctor's office was one, then there were 2 apartments above him. And when it was reduced, we brought the building back to its original use of 4 townhouses. There's 4 townhouses with 2nd and 3rd floor occupancy. Some of them have 2 bathrooms, some of them have 2.5 bathrooms. So we tried to return the use of the property to the way it was originally built. We also dealt with the allergy office for the past 50 years in that Dr. Glazer and Dr. Dreyfus and the last doctor that we purchased it from had between 20 and 30 people working in the office because they had 24 allergy rooms to treat the patients, and I was one of them for 3 years. But there was a lot of congestion and heavy use of the parking along Harvard Street. And it has been my dream, actually, for 50 years to somehow get parking for these 4 townhouses that are sort of like orphans on the street. They're the only ones that have no parking whatsoever. I also lived in the neighborhood. My parents were superintendents on Chestnut Street, and I walked up and down Monroe Avenue to Blessed Sacrament School. So I have a long history in the area, and I wouldn't want to do anything to this area to hurt it. I want to leave something for posterity because I'm not going to be here much longer, but the 4 EV charging stations was my idea to allow the people who are using the building to charge their electric cars should they get one in the future, which I'm trying to think of the future, even though it seems to be less that I'm going to experience myself. Okay. But that has been my dream, to get some landscaping for the back of the townhouses and to get them a little parking and an area that they can call their own, just as all the rest of the residential houses do on this street. That's my say.
I would like to add, in my background, you can see the proposed picture that we are going to place on both the buildings with the Zoning Board of Appeals sign. I want you to know that the green that's shown in the lot that formerly, or now is the doctor's office, is virtually kind of a semicircle, which we did the same thing on the corner of Monroe and Belmont. If you're familiar with Jeremiah's Bar and Tavern on the corner of Monroe and Belmont, which is 2 blocks west of Cobb's Hill Park, we own that property and have to put up with the bar over there occasionally. We, with the association, the neighborhood association, which we've been members of, as well as the Park Megs, which is in this area, have a garden, a flower garden, if you will, with trees and etc., which is almost identical to this kind of idea that we have. Furthermore, in today's USA Today, section B of the money, it indicates in a short little blurb that the registration for electric vehicles has soared. It is now 4.6% of all registered passenger vehicles. And this is without the Ford truck coming out or anything else. And I certainly can envision what Margot proposed of the charging stations, that each individual tenant would have its own, as a very significant contribution. The city is strenuously proposing bicycle paths and combination bicycle passenger routes. It would be a significant benefit here environmentally. That I would like to add, and I'm done.
Anna, could I just clarify one thing? And I know it's addressed in the site plan findings, but just in the description, I just want the group to understand that with the building at, or what was 304, 306 South Goodman Street, the office building, currently has a parking lot at the rear, pretty much paved line to line, you know, with no landscaping. So it's really not introducing a new parking lot per se, but it's really expanding what has been a pre-existing four space.
Is it the exact same? Is it the exact same configuration? Or are you rearranging it, modifying?
Oh no,
it?
we're putting in landscaping and putting in a snow storage space.
Are you rearranging like the way the parking stall? Okay. Are you installing new? Are you milling it all?
They'll be removing. Can I jump in? They'll be removing all of the asphalt that's there in order to regrade it.
Okay, so you're constructing a new. You're ripping up asphalt and constructing a new parking lot.
Correct.
Okay.
And the parking that's there now there's 40 feet from the east wall of the building to the east property line, and that accommodates 4 cars parked along that with their nose to the south.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Might I have a moment to just hit on a couple of things, Art or Anna, whoever, who's running this meeting?
It's okay with me.
First of all, Roger, thank you for the compliment on the Chipotle restaurant.
That's what it is, Chipotle. Yeah. No, Randy, that is a fantastic structure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I greatly appreciate the compliment. I just wanted to touch on a couple of points here. Number one, in terms of available parking, this has to be one of the most difficult intersections anywhere around Rochester for on-street parking. Goodman Street here is incredibly busy. There's no on-street parking on Goodman Street. And then the parking is very limited on Harvard because we have 4 apartment buildings or 4 apartments here, 4 4-bedroom apartments. That should be kept in mind. The Novaks don't rent out to people who take all 4 bedrooms because they can't accommodate the number of parking cars that would generate for people living here. So this really does a service to this building to make the building viable and allow it to continue on with safe lit parking spaces for the tenants of this property. And then secondly, I just want to touch a little bit more on the existing building on Goodman Street that we're proposing to demolish. This building is, in my opinion, unfortunately listed as a designated building of historic value. I think we have judgments that we have to make there. The building has been extensively modified. It has additions on it. The interior, there is absolutely nothing of the original fabric of this structure left on the inside. It has been gutted and turned into a 1950s doctor's office building with paneling on the walls, little tiny allergy consultation offices. It has been sliced and diced with HVAC systems running from attic down through to the basement and back up again. There's a couple of small features on the outside, the canopy over the front door, which is original to the structure. The sleeping porch that was on the side of it has been infilled with glass block. All the windows have been replaced with vinyl windows. It's got vinyl siding on it. I have a very hard time looking at this structure, and believe me, I've been doing this for 40 years. I look at myself as a preservationist. I have a hard time looking at this structure and seeing any redeeming qualities whatsoever. You have a very dense streetscape here. There's, yes, taking out this structure does provide a gap or create a gap in that streetscape. I do not think you're going to notice the difference with this structure gone from here. There's enough other density of buildings on this property with a little bit of landscaping here and the green space. It provides a good break and a soft, usable space for residents that will be living in this apartment building. And there I said my piece.
Thank you, Randy.
So Arthur, the basis,
oh yeah,
the basis of the designation is not just simply what we all have come to know and love as the 50-year rule. This has actually something more that was applied to this particular structure, Randy or Arthur?
Yes. It's a code requirement that came in I want to say 03.
But, yeah, all right, so again, but what I'm wondering is, as Randy's saying that, and I don't disagree with him about the lack of redeeming quality, this particular structure we're discussing removing, are there other adjacent structures? Is this a district that we're talking about, or was this particular building in some fashion designated years and years and years ago, or is it just simply the 50-year rule that we're talking about?
oh, it's the buildings individually listed.
Golly.
Right? Is that correct, Roseanne? Your
No,
face made
no.
a face.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I'm sorry, I'm on mute. It's a contributing to a district.
It's contributing, but it's not a preservation district. It's a
No,
national.
it's a state preservation district, just like Brown Cross and other areas, but it is not a city preservation district.
The
It's a
national
historic
register.
district, district, not a preservation district. And this was listed as a contributing building.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not
you could
listed on its own.
buildings are contributing in that area. Got it. All right.
So it sounds like actually the exterior is more intact than the interior.
That's debatable. I think Randy is accurate in saying that what you've got is a canopy over the door and a column, and the rest is vinyl siding. Well, is it vinyl siding?
I think it was
Okay.
vinyl. I mean, there's a little bit of brick.
And glass block.
So is the building now being used as an office building?
Currently
No.
vacant.
What is it? It's vacant.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
And if it were occupied, what would it be? 2 apartments?
By law, 2 apartments.
Okay.
As of right.
But how is it?
And we should say 2 incredibly large apartments.
Okay.
It's a big building.
Yeah, I would definitely caution against, saying that something has no redeeming value purely from an architectural standpoint. This structure has a lot of redeeming value in terms of contributing to the urban form and the density of our city. It's not just about the architecture inside and out. It's about the presence of a building on a major urban street.
Ryan, right? I'm sorry, I can't even see my screen. Kevin. Yeah, well, the code doesn't define contributing or non-contributing building, but the National Park Service does and the SHPO does. And the biggest exclusion from the contributing building definition are buildings that have been significantly altered physically, interior and the exterior. So from our perspective, it is a non-contributing building. And really, I think another thing that's telling, at least it was very telling to me, the fact that, and it'll be in the zoning board record, comments from another major property owner in the area who's got a wonderful record and has had achieved preservation awards, et cetera, for his properties, was actually offered this property by the former owner for free. And after his examination of the property, he wouldn't take it because of the condition. So it's clearly, from that perspective, non-contributing and by market definition of little value.
I think to add to what Kevin said, though, it's not just about that building. It's about replacing that building and having an empty, space and having a parking lot. It's not like you're proposing to build a new building. You're proposing a parking lot.
That's correct. Well, we're proposing the expansion of a parking lot, which to meet required parking, to bring the lot up to required lot size requirements for the city. Certainly, there's many. There's many properties in the city that have parking lots. Corner properties, there are parking lots on the side and that are screened from the street.
The parking and the lot size are not required, though, right? There's no obligation to meet the current zoning code on this existing lot.
We have a pre-existing deficiency in parking.
Yeah, and can I just ask the zoning staff, what are the real implications of that state?
What do you mean?
What Art is suggesting, that there are nonconformities in terms of the lot size. What are the real implications of that?
Well, I think the real implications of that is they can rent those for apartments, even though they don't have sufficient parking for it, and that parking demand would be taken up on the street parking.
So the status of that four-family structure and its ability to continue as is not jeopardized by the fact that the lot is not big enough or doesn't have the required parking, as if it were built from scratch that we would require. If it
was built from scratch, they would not be able to build what's there now. There are existing non-conformities.
It's not being built from scratch. Its occupancy or anything else is not jeopardized by that.
And right now, it does have the required lot size. And again, we seek to provide required parking. And that's for a lot of reasons that you've heard with respect to the tenancy.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to understand what are the actual implications.
The required parking is zero, right? Because there's 0 spaces for those townhomes. So the required parking is 0.
And can I just say though,
well, the required parking per code for required parking now per code for those units with the number of bedrooms is 6 spaces. And we're trying to achieve that to eliminate that non-conforming deficiency along with lot size.
But this site doesn't have that parking requirement because of a pre-existing nonconformity. So on a case-by-case basis, because this is a historic building, it does not have that same parking requirement due to a pre-existing deficiency.
But it's one lot now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's arguing. I think the application is to try to rectify a pre-existing non-conforming situation.
But I'm trying to understand, if it's not rectified, are there impacts?
Can I say something?
There are future impacts. Certainly, there are future impacts. There's marketing impacts. There's ability to sell it impacts. There's, they really can't change it because as soon as they change it, they lose their nonconformity status. So their pre-existing things go away. So, I mean, with nonconformities, there's always future impacts.
May I say something, please? May I say something, please? I had one of the townhouses vacant because I have no parking from October till April 1st. And that was one of the 4 townhouses that was vacant. I was unable to rent it because I have insufficient parking.
I would like to also butt in here. We had 2 people look at this building and to remodel it into what could be legal as a 2-family residence would cost approximately $750,000. It sounds abhorrent, but actually with the way they added on the section by the driveway of block and the complete change that would have to take place, that is a very good number of what it would cost. It's a hardship that one shouldn't have to bear.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm done.
Just thinking of something and
I can jump in because I had a comment I wanted to make too. I think there, the question about what is driving the desire to make this building code compliant with parking on it is really driven from the real world. The Novaks are very careful and cautious about the tenants that they rent to. Most of these tenants have cars, if not all of them. And it makes it very, very difficult to rent an apartment to a person with a good job who has a car to go back and forth from that job if they don't have a place to park that car. So, a small sacrifice in terms of taking down a building that we can debate all day, its historic value or non-historic value, a small sacrifice on that provides a solid base of income to continue the maintenance and operation of what is a much more significant building, this 4-family townhouse on the corner of Harvard and Goodman Street.
we also
Let
have
me-
the support of the neighborhood association.
And we have thousands of properties in the city without parking. So based on this logic, we would be demolishing neighboring properties around all those thousands of buildings.
Well,
It's not-
can I also just
No, you
step in,
wouldn't.
and Roseanne, I'll rely on you for this, but at this point, and I know the trigger for major site plan is the demolition of the building, but clearly by code, that determination and the weighing of all the factors we're talking about is in the purview of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have a scheduled hearing. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the site plan review, the redevelopment has been referred to you for the quality of that site plan review. And I believe that's what you should be focusing on. The zoning board has the authority to deal with the demolition, or maybe they'll deny the variance, who knows, but we'll take it there.
Yeah. I was
This
going to
board-
say,
But the major site plan trigger is the demo of the DBHV, and that's what this board is recommending to the zoning board. So this board is also reviewing the same thing that the zoning board is reviewing. It's providing its recommendation to that board.
Recommendation on the site plan,
On the demo of the DBHV,
Demolition.
which is the trigger.
which
is the
results
ma-
in the site plan.
Right, but the major site plan trigger is the demo of the DBHV, which is what the recommendation from this board would be on.
and I think I'm going
It's
to
not
ask,
on the site plan.
it was on both, Art, because the trigger is the DBHV. But you are right, we're just making, this board is just going to make a recommendation. Ultimately, the decision is in the hands of the zoning board.
Right.
But I did want to say two things. One is, I don't want to be too general about the parking issue. This is a known area where they do have constant parking problems. I think if you talk to enforcement or anybody, it is an issue. So I don't want to generalize about parking too much and say that this could be any building anywhere in the city. We all know this area. We all know that there's parking. Second, show of hands, who's never looked at this building? Should we bring up a picture of this building? Has everybody seen it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure as we talk more about it that everybody's been able to see it.
Well, let me come in here a little bit. We live in an area of the city, the ABC Streets neighborhood area. And throughout this whole, area, the parking situation is very similar to what it is over at Goodman and Harvard. It's alternate part. In fact, we live in the lower level of a 2-family house. We're renting. We have no space to park our car. So we park on the street and we switch sides, every day. We know that exists a lot of 3, 4, 5-family townhouse structures in the area without any parking, and they basically park in the street, and they seem to be they seem to be quite full. I hardly ever see any for rent signs. The beauty of why we put up with this, if you will, and I don't say that we put up with, because the area, this area, and the area over on Goodman and Harvard is a beautiful city residential area with tremendous amenities that make these areas very desirable. We're within walking distance to Park Berkeley. Harvard and Goodman is walking distance to all sorts of great, areas to walk to and be part of. When I drove around, so the conditions, it's very urban from both conditions and very desirable. And yes, it is not really for everybody, but it is desirable for enough people that really want to be here and move here. So when I first went by here, I said, you got to be kidding. We're going to demolish this building in favor of a parking lot. And that really bothered me. And I do know that in the 60s, there was a huge transformation of buildings that just weren't, that were really cut up and terribly altered. And you have, so it's and many of those buildings, most of those buildings were rehabbed into very desirable places to be in, only because it just reinforced the environment that was created. And I'm really afraid that if you start to look at demolishing structures like this, that I frankly think, yes, and I haven't been inside it, and yes, it may cost money to do this. I think it would be, from a urban design standpoint, a mistake. And I am not in favor of doing this, of getting parking, which I know that can be lived with, and that. So it is creating a hole there, and I just don't. I'm not in favor of it.
Roger, may I ask you, please, aside from the demolition of the designated building, which again, I believe is under the purview of the zoning board.
Well,
just looking at our site plan, do you have any issues at all?
Yes, I do have an issue with your site
what
plan.
might that be?
I think the landscaping in the front is a very suburban solution to the let's say the edge of that property, and that it really would require a really nice designed fencing condition along there, a little more urban in feeling.
So you would like
a little more formal in feeling, not so loose. And I don't know. That's,
well, certainly we can fix that.
It would help. It would help close the gap by creating something physical there. I haven't taken pictures of similar kinds of conditions, but if you were to drive around, you will see holes that have been effectively, covered, if you will, with a very nice design, fencing treatment.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Okay.
If you did that and held the former setback line of the house with a fence or wall art and did some landscaping in front of it, you probably would pick up another parking space. If that's the point of the exercise, you might get one more behind the wall.
Yeah, I mean, George, I think that's a reasonable request to do something in the way of a fence or wall, whatever it might be, as a backdrop to that landscape design. And we're not saying, and I know Roger's not saying that this has to be 6 feet high or anything. It's something more in the line of a shorter wall, a knee wall maybe, as a backdrop to that landscaping. And that goes physically to close the gap where there's a concern here about a remaining gap between the buildings by removal of the structure.
One of the things I like is the idea of creating electric stations for electric vehicles in the future. That's a very interesting thing. But I think that something solid along the front would really help it now.
Understood.
Anyway,
Thank you, Roger.
So Roger, are you saying that landscaping addresses your concerns? It doesn't for me. I'm wondering if you're saying it does.
it might. I'd like to see that. And I'd like to see other conditions that occur in the city similar that may have been, created to help. And that might alleviate some of our concerns about removing, the building. It's got to be replaced with something substantial.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
I apologize. I actually have to leave shortly to go to another meeting, but I just want to offer a couple thoughts. One, I can definitely appreciate the situation that the applicants are in terms of making it's difficult to rent some of those spaces, and this existing building that you're proposing to demolish is not in great shape and would definitely cost some money to renovate it. And I definitely like, if you were to proceed with this, the electric charging stations. I think that's a great offer to do that. My concern, and I'm just kind of coming from the perspective of sort of representing the Rochester 2034 comprehensive plan. And quite honestly, there's really nothing in the plan that would support demolishing a house like this in an area like this and replace it with car storage. It's whether it be promoting or re-densification of the city and repopulation of the city, any urban design perspective, historic preservation. I realize this building has some problems, but this is a historic area. From multiple perspectives, it would be just really problematic to demolish this and replace it with car storage.
Well, and the current code doesn't allow it either. So I think I would defer to the current code, which does not allow demolition of DBHVs.
Well, I mean, they're going for a variance. That's why they're here. They're going for a variance. That's why they're here. You can't count that against them. Everyone has the right to try for a variance or to pursue the relief of the code.
To issue a recommendation based on the proposal.
Yeah. So I think we need to do a two-parter here. I think we need to do a vote on the demolition and a vote on the site plan. And I say that because ultimately, if the zoning board approves the demolition, I think you want to have some information given to them on the site plan. So if there's no objections, I think we'll just take it in two parts.
That makes sense. I'd say
So
yes.
we could potentially have a yes and a no vote.
Yep.
Yes, we'll have two different motions, and you can have a split vote, you can have the same vote, but this way, at least in terms of this referral going to the ZBA, which is what this is, it's going to be a referral to this office and then to the ZBA. There can be some clarity, because ultimately, again, they're the ones who are going to decide on the DBHV.
Let's go.
And if we could do that.
Let's vote.
Okay. So
before we vote, can I chime in real quick?
Matt. I would like to get, if you can be quick, because I don't want to lose Kevin.
Understood. I'm just waiting for my chance.
Okay.
The property south of this, is that residential, or is that also converted residential into commercial?
It's residential.
Owner occupied or rental? Do you know?
I believe so, George. Is that an owner occupied or rental to the south of the parking lot?
Looks to be rental.
Yeah, it's a double that's owned by Mumster Properties in Brighton.
Okay. Yeah. I did want to say too, and this is something that will, as part of our zoning application, that non-conforming structure and use that we'd like to remove is inordinately close to the wall and the windows of that building. So there's sort of a detriment to that adjacent property as well. So many of these things will be rectified. And I guess I would submit at this point too, that since the zoning code, and it hasn't been changed yet, and we could talk about the future, that we're trying to seek compliance with it in so many ways and bringing it to greater conformity with the code. I argue that essentially, as part of the plan, this zoning code, that we're basically in conformance with that idea.
Okay.
I guess I would just say that we've run into issues splitting the vote in half. So I'll defer.
I can't hear you, Tom. You're really low.
Can't hear you, Tom.
Can't hear
We've
you.
had
You're
issues
too low.
splitting the, we've had issues in the past splitting and having 2 votes on the same project. So I don't love that approach, but I'll defer to the group.
Okay. I think also something I want to mention is if this was not a DBHV, they could tear it down and put it in the parking lot. So, I mean, I think that needs to be put in perspective too. That
With no approvals?
well, yeah, they'd still be here for approvals, but we'd be talking about not talking about demoing the building. We'd be talking about lot coverage and screening and everything else.
And before you go on to do whatever form of voting you're going to do, I'd ask Roger this, but is there anybody else on the committee, forgetting about the demolition, that has a problem with the site plan itself? Anybody at all with any issue with that?
Well, I spoke up before, but I think it needs to be tweaked and
Okay.
urbanized, if you will, a little more urban solution.
And that would be doing something with a different landscape design, a little more formal, and with a backdrop of some sort of a wall or solid screening.
To kind of hold the street line.
Yes.
And the, you know, the setback sense of density, some memory of
Sure.
that density if the building's gone.
And, you know, I'm comfortable doing the one vote. My concern is I want to make sure if we're doing it, that the motion includes some recommendations for mitigation in the event that they still permit the demolition.
You guys are the experts. I'll do 1 vote or 2 votes, whatever you tell us we should do.
Well, I like the idea of 2 in this particular case, because they are 2 very different issues. It's an if A then B scenario.
I agree in principle, Eric.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Okay, I'll make a motion. Let's start with the big one. I will make a motion to, do we always, I come from zoning, so I always make them in the positive. So I'm going to do it in the positive. I'm going to make a motion to approve, to recommend approval of the demolition of the DBHV. And Anna,
Okay.
could you?
Yep.
wanna
So do we have a second?
You can
This is-
second it. It doesn't mean you're saying yes.
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay, so Roseanne,
That was in the positive, recommending approval. Is that what that was?
yes, we're recommending
It's my zoning board
approval
training.
of the demo of the DBHV. So Roseanne, yay or nay?
I'm a nay.
To approve, if you say yes, you're approving the demo. If you say no, you're saying no demo.
I should know this. I made my own motion. Say that again?
If you say yes, you're approving the demo. If you say no, you're not approving the demo.
And that would be recommending or not recommending, correct?
You're making
Yeah.
a recommendation, yeah. it's a
Yes,
recommendation.
you are right. We are not the ones approving or disproving.
This is a recommend, yeah, that would go straight to the zoning board for their consideration.
Okay, I'm a no.
Eric?
No.
Kevin?
No.
Tom?
No.
Matt?
Nope.
Dave?
No.
Roger?
No.
And Jim?
No.
Okay, so by a vote of 0-8-0, the project review committee recommends that the zoning board deny the demo of the DBHV. I'll let you guys make your motion for your next step.
Okay, so now the motion would be, should the demolition be approved? Recommend approval.
Would you
of the site
recommend
plan.
yeah.
And would we do that with conditions based on what Roger and Jim had put forth?
If they want to make a motion with those conditions, sure.
Go for it, Roger.
Well, let's see. I'm not sure if you really need that, but I guess that the current site plan as presented is way too suburban and would have to be made much more formal and urbanized with some sort of a physical fence-like structure.
I'll throw my 2 cents in there, Roger. I think we'd want to see a greater exploration of screening on the street facing, so the South Goodman side of the site. And then I'm going to also add the south side of the site where it's very close to the neighboring property.
Personally, like that more generalized wording, Matt. I think that was good.
Okay, so I'm gonna say that Roger made the motion and Matt seconded it. Is that fair? Yes.
We got the gist of it. And it sounds like the applicant's willing to tweak some things and look at some things. So, yeah.
Okay, Roseanne,
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Actually, so what motion is on the table? I'm apologize. I need just make sure I'm understanding correctly. So you're recommending approval of the parking lot with adequate screening?
With more urban physical screening, like a fence or a wall on the is it the west and south side?
Okay,
the
great.
street side and the south side.
Okay.
That's, I don't know if it's necessary to say this, but that's if the demolition is approved.
Like as the mitigating measure. Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Matt?
Yep.
Dave?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And Jim?
Yes.
By a vote of 8-0-0, the motion to the potential mitigating measure of a parking lot with more urban physical screening like a fence around the west and south side passes in the affirmative. So that would be recommended approval to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
And also approval of the site plan, correct?
Well, we don't actually approve of the site plan here. We just make a
yeah.
recommendation.
That's
No.
So,
Recommending that Roseanne approves the site plan, the final site
no, the
so
they would be recommend.
I'll take a stab at Anna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think the recommendation to the zoning office is going to be in the event that the zoning board approves the demolition as mitigation, we recommend the following changes to the site plan, which is to provide greater screening with some sort of physical structure like a fence or wall along the street edge and the south edge of the site plan.
And it's going to the zoning board in review of the variances.
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't want to be nitpicking here, but we've been at this for a while, and I just want to be sure that it's reflected in the record. Since the authority of the committee, as I see it or as I read it, is to recommend approval of the site plan application, denial of the site plan application, or modification, approval with modifications. And I think it's important to have on the record.
Okay, I appreciate everyone's time. I will.
Okay, thank you all.
Put this in a formal written document for you to take with you to your zoning board.
Thank
And
you so much.